Welcome to this week's Cattywampus podcast. I'm Kirk Driscoll, your host. I've got a good friend of mine here with us today. Ray, thank you so much for being willing to show up and share and be transparent today with us. Grateful for you.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, man. So I was sitting there thinking, I know we always try to put how we know each other. Had we met before I had bought the car shop, or did we meet when I bought Alpharetta Service Center? Is that where we had met?
We met there.
We met there. Yeah. So I remember, it's like I buy the service center that had been there for 30 years. Don't know anything about the car repair business. Still don't. I can tear up a car really good. I can't fix one, right? I like them, drive them fast and jack them up, a big truck, right?
Right.
But I can't fix them. And so it was pretty interesting buying that shop. But everybody was there, had a purpose of why they wanted to work, there. So it was pretty much all felons or folks that were in recovery. Is the whole shift around. It owned it a little over 2.5 years. It was awesome. And the guy that bought it from us is continuing to keep growing it. And it's pretty cool. But I met a lot of really interesting people, you being one of them.
Right.
But I remember just the conversations around there, you were always very transparent and very open with just kind of where you had been and what life was like and all that. So it's pretty awesome. But if you can, just tell people just kind of quick, just kind of what your day to day is. Where you live around this area, wife, kids, kind of. I know what you do and where you are.
I moved to Georgia in 2010.
Yeah,
and wanted out of the car business, and it was a lot of bad, evil stuff, and wanted to get away from it, and didn't know anything else.
Yeah.
Did not go to school, not educated. So I got sucked back in, and, it's part of my blood, and fell back into it.
Yeah.
And, my life in the car business has always been crazy and wild.
Yeah.
And the way I lived, and, I just wanted away from it, but unfortunately, I stayed in it. And when I look at it, it's like, well, is it unfortunate because where I'm at, it happened for a reason?
Yeah.
Like pulling into your shop.
Yeah.
All the other emission stations were closed and yours was the only one open. So I said, turn around, go in there. And I did. And met a good friend.
Oh, yeah, man.
And,
it's been an awesome journey. Well, it's just a crossover. I don't own the shop anymore, but we probably talk more now than we did and connect more than when I did own the shop. Kids go to the same school, or my youngest, and probably I guess your oldest, go to the same school now. So we see each other around there a little bit. And so it's just, it's pretty cool. And then to be able to have a relationship, someone trusts you enough to share with those that are going to be seeing this and viewing this. So I'm grateful for that, to have it. So I'm grateful for all those business opportunities, those things that I've done in the past, because I've always tried to create relationships. It's never been transactionally focused. It's always relationally focused. And I had some really good relationships that were developed and when we owned Alpharetta Service Center. So it's pretty awesome. So thanks for being here. And as we got to jump into it, man, like, what I know you were asking, you're like, man, what does cattywampus mean, right? Like, we've all experienced it. I grew up hearing it, but it's just when your world is jacked up, imploding, askew, awkward. Just, there's several other words that maybe we shouldn't say here on this one, but you can imagine what they are. So what's that cattywampus moment in your life you want to share?
Well, real quick, getting to the word.
Yeah.
I had to look it up, of course, and this thing that stood out is out of control. Going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And
I don't know anything about that. I've always been straight, like right ahead a lot. Yeah.
Right in control.
Right.
I've got this. Yeah. Such a false belief.
Amen.
And, really, I believed that my whole life, that I was in control.
Yeah.
And I had to do everything myself. I couldn't let my guard down and ask you for help.
Yeah.
That's not how I learned.
Right.
And it took a long time. And basically, for me, it took me getting caught and backed in the corner on the bottom. When you're down and you only got one way to go is to look up. And that's what it took for me. And
no, that moment where you're down, what does that look like?
It was pretty ugly. I was in a jail cell.
Yep.
And praying to God to get me out of there. But that wasn't his idea. And it was in 2017. And I was done, my third marriage, and there's no way out. I'm going to lose everything and maybe go to jail. And didn't like that,
Yeah.
It was rough. So,
did you call your wife from jail? Or
I actually told her before I was going to get arrested and had to turn myself in. And looking back, it was part of my path because I was starting to go in the right direction, getting involved in men's groups, and, wasn't transparent with them, wasn't open and honest.
What was really going on?
Who I was.
Yeah.
Double life.
Yeah. But so I've experienced in a lot of men's groups, if you're sitting there and if they're faith-based or non-faith-based, let's just call it just a men's group. And first persons kind of go around and share and, hey, how was your week? Oh, it was kind of tough. I didn't get that deal closed that I needed. Right. And next guy was like, oh yeah, I argued with my wife. Or I didn't journal that, every day this week, or I didn't read the Bible, whatever it might be. The guy that's got that bombshell, like, dude, I just, I called these 3 people. I did this, like what was that like? Your desire was to quit doing what you were doing. But the group is like, you can't take something so deep if everybody else is not willing to be that transparent at times. Do you find that to be true or not?
Absolutely. It was a process first for me to learn about being open, honest, and transparent, which is not how I was taught in the car business. And, from my dad at a young age, a young adult age. However, that was a choice I made. And it took me a long time to realize I made the wrong choice.
Yeah. Well, it's like if we live this life that everybody sees, but then we have a private life that's full of lies and deception and, just lust and pain and just all those things. It's hard. It's hard to share those. And like, how do you navigate out? And, some find a way to navigate it out, but a lot of them find themselves in a jail cell or in the back of a police car or handcuffed in a hotel or handcuffed on the side of the street or wherever. And it's like, okay, I'm called. So like, here's that. It's a forced exit rather than a volunteer, position, because it gets so complicated. And so from there, but sitting in a jail cell, did you think it was possible, or what? You knew you were at the end at this point in time, but did you think it was possible to come out of that darkness?
I was desperate. I was willing to do what it took, and you have to want in anything and do the work to get it done. You just can't say, please help me, because I tried that a long time and it didn't work. It was when I was ready to surrender and realize that I'm not in control. I can't control this. I need help. For me to talk to another brother, another person in my life that I have relationships with, and tell them I'm struggling. I need help. And pick up the phone. If that person don't answer, you call the next one.
Yeah.
And by the time you get to that third message that you're leaving, you're okay.
Yeah.
You know?
And you shared your burden, kind of divided your burden. And that's the thing. So what would you say through all that struggle? And like some people, when they said there's like, we were just talking about it before we started recording, if it's an eating disorder, and you're trying to maintain a healthy balance, like I want to be healthy and fit, but is that my addiction telling me that I shouldn't eat anymore? Or is that me being conscious that I want to, eat? If it's around alcohol, I can't do it. Right. I'm just not, I can't have a healthy regulation. I'm not going to, I'm going to regulate it poorly every time because my addiction or my desires of my past, right, are going to, if I quit doing the things I'm doing, those things are going to bubble up, and it's just not something, it's not healthy for me to do. I'm not bound by it anymore, but I know I can get really wrapped back up in it really quick if I quit doing those things. But other areas of life, there's triggers all the time for you, right? Like it's
right.
Like, but what have you learned through this for something that won't bother me, right? I'm saying not going to bother me, wouldn't have the same effect if I didn't have developed the skills that you developed. So like, how do you manage that?
Well, I think there's tools in everything, and there's tools in life on a daily basis. And, there's many times we forget to use those tools, like getting up and surrendering our day. That you realize that, man, it's 11:30. I'm scatterbrained. I can't find this. I can't. What was I supposed to do? And be like, the first thing I should have did was surrender everything and ask for help. But the tools, whether it's the men's group, whether it's counseling, there's various things. And when you get away from them, you can see the disarray in your life. And to notice that, like an alarm going off, and realize, hey, you're getting out of balance here.
Right.
It's like, stop eating. Stop eating. You ate one slice, 2 slices of cake. So, your brain now, you're like, you want.
Yeah, in that setting, it's that compulsiveness is not feeding that desire, right? It's like if it's not that thing, right, then it's easier to regulate healthy balances around some of those areas in life. I would say if you're out of balance, really out of balance in one, there's going to be several areas of your life that are very out of balance, right? You're not probably doing a lot of the things that are necessary to be healthy and productive in other areas. What are a couple of the tools that you learned coming from the jail cell to sitting in support groups and running them now for men? Like what are some of those tools that you've learned to navigate through this?
I think the biggest part of it, before you even know that you got to use your tools, is finding out the why. When you learn the why and you realize that, it's okay, is it a false belief? Because usually it's developed behind that, okay, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Now, do I get triggered to feel that way? Yeah, it's a default that's programmed in my brain. So I have to do the work to get out of that and realize I'm wonderfully made, and connecting yourself to that. And I think the first thing is starting out with prayers and, having that intimate relationship with our Heavenly Father before anything, and is the main key that you're wonderfully made, Raymond.
Yeah.
You're a child of God.
Mm-hmm.
And then second, that, okay, my wife is a child of God. Am I treating her like that right now? And he's a child of God. The guy who just cut me off is, that is a hard concept to love everyone.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of it. And then, of course, having the backup, the boundaries, the guys call.
So what are some boundaries you've put in place for you? So if someone's watching this, like what are some of the things that you've done?
Well, for me, it's being on the internet, that I'm not going to go to Facebook other than work related. I'm not going to go on social media. I'm not going to let something drop on my lap or take that chance for the exposure.
Yeah.
It's me, to have cameras in my office that my wife has access to have a tracker on my phone, to have a blocker on my phone and my other devices. Those are all things to guide me. The kind of guardrails in some aspect.
Yeah.
Dollars in my wallet, only a certain amount. And there's days I come home and have more. And I tell my wife, I'm taking this $200 and putting it aside for when we go out to dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, where'd you get it from?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah.
But so the thing is like, when we look at it, if we set in a boundary in that, we just look at it on the phone, right? Then it's preventing a behavior, right? That would start on the phone that most likely is where it's targeted. It drops on. You don't necessarily have to go looking for it, right? If they can, they're pretty creative in the way that they can find our weaknesses.
Oh man!
And so if they can see it, then they're going to exploit it, and so they're going to go from the phone to the internet, to a location, to absolute destruction and chaos, right?
Right.
And it's like, when someone that doesn't understand that, and it's like, man, it's just look at it, it's like, how in the world, you got a beautiful wife, you got a kid, you got this business, you got all this family, you got all this stuff going on, you're like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? That obsession that take over is like, how does that happen? From just your experience, right? Like to where the phone wasn't enough, the computer wasn't enough. Like how does that progression?
Well, it's the why. Growing up feeling I'm not good enough. Okay. So if I medicate, I feel good enough. I feel better. So I feel down again. So medicate again. It's raining out. Medicate. It's, I just smashed my car. So medicate. It's easy for your brain to think that I'm just going to do this. It's going to make me feel better. And there's such a struggle, and I find it still. I mean, it's not like, okay, I'm not going to struggle anymore.
Yeah.
It's humanly impossible, I think, not to have a struggle.
Right.
And the desire, but it's when you realize that and surrender it, and want to go on that track of, how you live.
And making the next right decision rather than
exactly
not a bad decision, but not the healthiest. And then that leads you to the next. And then it's like, the progression of decisions, from 1 to 10 looks awful.
Right.
Or from 1 to 2 is not bad.
No.
2 to 3 is not bad. It's like, oh, it's not that bad. 3 to 4, it's like, oh, that's not bad. But, no one, when you jump from 1 to 10, it's out of control chaos, right? But if it's that slow progression, and that's what I try to talk with guys and folks to see, is they don't understand how it can go from 1 to 10. And I'm like, well, it generally is over a period of point in time and thought process without those blockers or without those disciplines, without that accountability, whatever it is for that person to keep them from going to that vice,
right?
That's going to make them feel worthy, right? And we all know it's as soon as it's done, we don't feel worthy. We feel worse right at the end of it, right?
I mean, we're the best at it, convincing ourselves. We're the best salesperson.
Yeah.
Because we believe it.
Yeah.
And it's so true that,
yeah.
If you believe something, you're going to do it.
Yeah. We had talked through, I know a couple of things that you said, but those double D's, those daily disciplines. I know you said you got in the Word, you were calling people, and making and just checking in with them, but also letting them know how you were doing.
Right.
But do you have anything else you do daily to keep you in balance and make sure that the guardrails are still in place so that you don't end up back where you were?
I would say that the main thing, and I fall short of it some days, getting up and being thankful that I have today.
Yeah.
And when I do, my life starts to get disarray. I lose things. I forget where I put this. It's just scattered. And you got to get back to reality. And, the way I do that always is through prayer and silence, and just disconnect from everything and realize that I need your help.
Yeah.
I need you, please.
Yeah.
And 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's there.
And there's times you just keep rolling then, but there's times when you stop to be thankful and grateful for
just
what you're given, or you don't even see it.
Yeah.
You don't even see it.
And that's the thing, is like when we're stuck in the mess, and that's where I really want you to hear just in a second, we're going to just look just in this one camera rather than to me.
Right.
And for that guy that is so bound up in the lies, it's like, and I don't know, it's like, it's so hard. It's like we want to admire, and we're drawn to the opposite sex, right? Like there's a yearning of connection. We're not built to be alone, but we distort it so badly at times. I think where the person that's closest to us that we love the most, and we just then turn around and distort the lust-driven desires and everything. And it's like well, it's just something that goes from a click to a jail cell, right? It's like, how did a click end up in jail, right? Like it's there. And for that guy that's just clicking, right? This is just a 1, 2, 3, right? Like, what would you share with him that would hopefully just turn him back the direction that he needs to go, rather than, he's at 3, right? Mm-hmm. You've been to 10, where you're calling your wife, talking to her and letting her know, hey, I'm going to jail, right? He's just clicking. What would you tell, if you're looking at that camera, what would you tell him of what that progression looks like and what he needs to avoid, and for the guy too that's stuck all the way at 10, that there's hope on the other side? What would you tell him?
Like I shared, it's so easy to convince yourself that it's okay, and just I'll be okay this one time. And God's got a different plan for you. And to realize that what he's done for you. And after the fact, I thought how disrespectful I am when I was doing stuff like that. And to really understand that, and to realize you're not accepting the grace, and there's nothing you can do to earn it or deserve it. And just to want him to live in you. Wow. It's that simple when you think about it. It's just finding that clear moment to realize that, somebody died for my sins before I was born. It was a hard concept. But when you understand that, and you love our Heavenly Father, it's so clear. It really is. You got to get out of that fog. Long enough to realize what's pulling you there. And, do I want to get better? Do I want to get well? I went to a place, Bethesda, and that's the first thing they do. People who want to get better go to this side of the room, and the two guys that didn't go, they said, okay, see ya.
So,
It's like, that's simple.
and you know where that side of the ring is going to end back up.
And unfortunately, there's a bunch of people that went on that other side, want to get well, but they're not willing to do the work. You got to do the work.
Yeah.
Well,
I appreciate you being willing to share. I know it is not an easy or sensitive subject to come around, but I want someone that's watching this to have heard this. And if you want to have a private one-on-one conversation with my buddy here, I know you're willing to do that, because clicking will end up where a click doesn't satisfy that what you're yearning for, will it? That will fade. And so if you're trying to fill some void with a click and a view and that kind of interaction, it will come to a point where that's not enough, and you will end up where you ended up, and that's completely broken, in a jail cell, full of just of shame and guilt and remorse. And there's you don't have to keep doing what you're doing. Let us help you break free of that cycle and live truly free. So I'm grateful for you sharing. Thank you for watching. Please share this with someone that you might think could benefit from it, and check back next week for another great episode of Cattywampus.